4 years of studying, 3 years of articles, board 1, board 2. You crossed the finish line. Finally, CASA behind your name. Everyone congratulates you. Your parents are proud. Your LinkedIn lights up. But inside, you feel exactly the same. You still doubt every decision. You're still anxious. You're still not enough. How? What went wrong? Nothing went wrong. You just learned the hard truth. CASA doesn't make you whole. It multiplies whatever you already are. So here's the real question. Who are you building while you're building your career? Today, we are joined by Cheryl Crowie, former chartered accountant and life coach for professional women. We chat about why chasing the 4 letters won't help you fix what needs fixing within, and how you can start your journey of growth and healing today. We also chat about the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence, how to manage the dangers of comparison on social media, why mimetic desire secretly controls us, the role of parenting in self-esteem, how fear-based decisions and limiting beliefs run and ruin your life, why CASA can only multiply but cannot add, and more. I hope you enjoy. My travelers on the road to CASA, very fast ones. The first one, Happy Freedom Day. Let's just rewind. Truth be told, it's meant to be 1994 every 27 April. So let's rewind and just say thanks. Say thanks for the decades of struggle, of so much resilience and persistence, so that we can finally be resilient and persistent for other things, right? So we can study and stuff. So thank you to those of 1994, those brave souls that became our emancipation. So thanks to you guys, and thank you for Freedom Day. Thank you for the day to remember that. Next one. Are you feeling stuck? Do you feel like something is just not moving within you? Something needs to change? Do you feel like you're struggling with insecurity, self-doubt, overwhelm? You feel like your goals are so far away, but you still have them. You still have them. You just need to become someone who can chase them. Look no further. Our guest today, Cheryl, has a suite of offerings in the form of self-esteem coaching, life coaching. So if you are in need of help in these areas, book a free call with her, free consultation, and see if you guys gel, see if you guys match. I hope you enjoyed the episode today, and with that, on to it. Welcome back, my people. This is the Road to CA podcast, the show for aspiring chartered accountants to inspire, empower, and inform the difference makers of tomorrow. Today, guys, today we are joined by a former chartered accountant who's now a life coach. Imagine, specialized, but most importantly, most pertinently, passionate about self-esteem. If you want to not only survive, guys, but really believe in your life, I think this episode is for you. Most importantly, though, she's a family woman, a professional, and a believer in self-efficacy and self-healing. We're joined by Miss Self-Esteem herself. We're joined by Cheryl Crowie. Cheryl, how are you?
Hello. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm excited. I think when I was going into your world, because you create content, so people want to check you
Yeah.
out on Instagram, there's so much on this self-esteem, self-healing, emotional alignment. There's so much that actually is strategic that we
Mm,
don't look at in terms of our careers, which is what you're dealing with. Like that whole thing of, do I align? So I'm so excited.
yeah. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get into the conversation.
Mm, mm. To start us off, we go back in the road this year. We rewind. So where did this whole CA thing begin for you?
Whew, okay. So let's go back to the very beginning. So I am the philosophy of my coaching is self-esteem, but I'm an emotional healing, empowerment, and self-confidence coach now for career women who not only want success and accomplishment in their careers, but who want to build meaningful and purposeful lives. And yes, I'm an ex-chartered accountant with 10 years experience in the corporate industry. And so my journey began long before I qualified. Let me just give you some background. It started as a young girl with a compassionate heart and a deep desire to build a life that was more stable and emotionally healthy than the one that I grew up in. So I
Mm,
wanted to build financial security. I wanted to uplift my parents. I wanted to be proud of who I was. And I wanted to genuinely impact people and the world. And so at the age of 14, in my mind's eye, I had a vision of myself being a leader in the corporate world and creating meaningful impact. And so
mm,
I went along and I did that. I achieved my dream. I qualified as a CA. I did my articles through Ernst & Young, and I grew my way up the corporate ladder to what APSA calls vice president, which is their
mm,
team leader. And my journey was very different. So before I go into that, is there
mm,
anything specifically you want to talk about in terms of
mm,
how, where do you want to start?
mm. Like the sort of scope and breadth of your journey is, I think it's very valuable for aspiring CAs to kind of understand the context for you having gone down this road. It's like a lot of people might argue that someone who's um, just a self-esteem coach, for example, they wouldn't understand because they don't get it. Like
Mm,
once you're in this corporate thing, it's too hard to leave. The golden handcuffs are way too golden. So I think it's so important that you're given that context. I wanted to specifically go into your studies. So you actually noted that one of your kind of greatest achievements in your pre-information that you gave me was that you passed first time every year, even though during that time you found out that you were clinically depressed along the way, which is like, it's
mm.
clear that you were not acting on emotion. Clearly, you were acting on something deeper. I'm like curious as to what was driving you. Maybe it was that childhood that maybe you were trying to avoid. Like, I'm just curious, what drove
Mm.
you?
So are you asking, despite being in the
Mm,
lowest point of my life, how did I manage to pass every year first time?
exactly. Yeah.
I think it's a few things. I think it's two things. I think for me, the journey, the CA journey, the biggest challenge was not the academic part of it. I'm a very academic person by nature. Um, I topped my grade in school. I was very focused. And so for me, the learning, absorbing, and applying part of the journey was not the biggest challenge for me, although it was a challenge. And so I think that played a big part, is that I'm firstly academically inclined naturally,
Sure.
but secondly, it was that deep dream that I held in my mind and in my heart for so long to become a CA. So regardless of the emotional internal struggles that I faced, the dream of me qualifying, the dream of me moving out of my hometown to a bigger town like Johannesburg. For Durbanites, Johannesburg is a much bigger town. Being able to immerse myself in the corporate jungle and climb the ladder and be able to have that financial stability to do things for my parents, for example, like fund their medical aid, which they'd never had in their life. For me, it was the need to uplift first my family and then the people around, and myself, and then the people around me. So I wanted that success. I was driven by that need to succeed in order to be able to do this. And I was one of the few in my family, on both my mother and my father's side, to have such a specific, prestigious qualification in order to be able to offer them the things that they never had, and myself, and be able to offer myself the lifestyle of traveling, for example. So yeah, I would say it comes down to those two things: a really big dream and a deep desire for upliftment, and yeah, being academically focused.
And then you get to the dream, right? Clearly something, okay, now you've achieved it. Now like clearly something has to change, because you can't be driven by the same thing. So what now, or let's even call it like 4 years ago when you were starting your practice, what was the drive now?
Yeah, to continue and maintain it.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me just take a step back. The journey for me, internally, my experience was very different to the prestige that the qualification of CASA projects or conveys. I battled anxiety, chronic self-doubt. I was my own worst critic. I was emotionally overwhelmed. I was terrified of disappointing people, of being misunderstood, judged, of getting things wrong. And then I realized that this was all tied back to my childhood experiences. I realized that that pain had come from the lack of emotional nourishment that I got as a child, the low self-esteem, and having to see my parents go through struggle and pain, and having to be the emotional caretaker for them and taking on responsibility from a young age. And so I didn't realize how deeply that had shaped my confidence until I had reached the point of depression.
Sure.
And so when qualified as a chartered accountant, I knew that I needed to, now that that was behind me, I needed to actually find myself and figure out what is my path forward, what is my direction, who am I, and what do I want? And is climbing the corporate ladder something that's come out of the need to achieve and be results driven? And coming out of a trauma? Or was it something that I wanted?
Yeah.
And I realized it was something that I wanted. But at that point, I also realized that I needed to first heal myself. And so I entered the world of emotional healing, self-esteem, and personal development, not to change my career, but as a way of, out of a need to rebuild myself. And that changed everything for me, because I trained in transactional analysis, psychotherapy foundations, self-esteem development, and I completed my NLP master practitioner. And through that experience, which was very rigorous and demanding, which I did parallel to my professional duties in the financial services sector as I was climbing and building myself, I realized that I had to confront my own patterns and identify where I was being dependent on other people emotionally, where I was seeking validation, where I was seeking praise, where I was seeking approval, where I was following a direction and climbing a mountain that I maybe didn't want to climb. And I realized it was so emotionally liberating for me. It changed every part of my life. It changed the way it freed me from my internal struggles of pain and self-doubt and anxiety and overthinking and low self-confidence. But it also was the turning point in my womanhood, in the moment that I got to build a relationship with myself. And that turning point changed the way I led at work. It changed the way I approached my relationships. And the way my relationships were shaped. It allowed me to own my choices unapologetically, to separate my worth from the opinions of people, from the preferences of people, from the actions of people, from the identity of being a CA. Because let's be honest. Our identities, for us who are on this journey, there's a large part of our identities that are rooted in being a chartered accountant. Those 4 letters at the end of our names and that you will get mean a lot. Yes, it's a testament to the journey and the character development and the effort and the blood, sweat, and tears. But it's also it becomes part of your name. What a bigger part of your identity than that.
Yeah.
And that's what
Sure.
everyone is after and pursuing. And so what sustained me, to answer your question, I had to give you that background. To answer your question, what sustained me through university to get to the dream and through my articles was not what was sustaining me now, because I realized I want more. I want more for myself. And it was a personal thing. It's not that I disregard the CA route. It's not that I think it was a very big part of my journey, and my clients are CAs and I relate to them and they relate to me. And I was meant to do that. I was meant to go that route first. But I said to myself, okay, I didn't like auditing. So now I'm going to try financial services. Okay, I was an AVP in financial services. Then the VP role came up. And if I hadn't built my self-esteem and my self-confidence and my self-belief, I probably would have never felt good enough for that role. It was a highly demanding and dynamic role. And I tried it and I did it for 18 months. But then I decided I want to be a coach. The studies that I had done, the personal experience of going through a process of self-discovery, self-healing, building my own self-confidence from the inside out, discovering who I am and what I stand for and what I want, and becoming unapologetic and bold was what then allowed me to transition out of corporate at the end of 2023 and start my practice full time. Because I wanted to help women who are struggling with the same emotional barriers that are shaping their confidence, their relationships, their choices. And so, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
You gave us the whole you gave us the whole journey, and I think there's so much value in your journey already. Like, some ideas that came to my mind was thinking about your CA journey as even a way to figure out what what market are you going to solve? If you're like some type of if you're a people person and you want to get into something like coaching, right? Think about what problems CAs or the types of CAs that you're dealing with in your networks. Think about the problems that they have, and think about
Mm.
maybe over your even your articles, learning, getting certifications in those areas that might align with yourself, obviously first, but then also with those people who need the problem solved. So looking at your CA journey, looking at your articles as that time to figure out, okay, who am I going to be serving? And then obviously getting your CA and further serving in that regard. You also mentioned in a previous interview the difference that there's a difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. Can you actually define
Mm.
those two? 'Cause I think that was quite an important, if we look at
Yeah.
the operationalizing of these terms, which tend to be they can be quite woo-woo and like sort of like obscure in the
They.
air. I think the
Mm.
distinction really helps with understanding how to apply them and use them in your life. Can you explain the two?
Yeah. Sure. So your self-esteem is how you think about yourself. It's how you value yourself. It's internal. It's your evaluation of your value and worth. It's believing in your opinion that you are a valuable and worthy person, regardless of what other people believe or say, or other people's opinions. Okay. So your self-esteem is rooted in your intrapersonal dynamics. How do you think about yourself? How do you feel about yourself? Self-confidence is the embodiment of that, the stories you tell yourself, the belief system you hold about yourself, how you relate to yourself, other people, and the world, and your worldviews. And your self-confidence is how you embody it. Do you
Mm,
trust yourself and your judgment? And how do you show up in the world?
hmm, hmm. Okay, now, so the intra, which is that self-esteem, it's like what you it's an intern, it's very internal. It has like
Mm.
no connection with
Mm.
external things like accolades and achievements and other people. Really, esteem is it's very much on you.
Yeah.
It's just interesting how, it's self-esteem. It's not them esteem, but so much of our self-esteem is derived from other people, or we anchor it in others. And I wanted to actually touch on specifically social media and how you see, or how you would maybe advise people to approach, because there's so much on about other people on social media and there's so little about yourself, and it's very easy to get into your sort of like
Yeah.
mimetic, comparative, you you
Yeah.
know those parts of yourself that are always going to diminish oneself and
Yeah.
aggrandize others. Like how do you approach, how do even you approach social media? Because as a coach, as someone who has to be active, you have to also manage looking at other
Yeah.
people, other coaches, and not comparing yourself and focusing on your journey. Like, how do you approach the social media thing?
Okay. So we've all heard the saying social media is a highlight reel of people's lives. Everybody is showing their best self, what is going right in their lives. It's become a romanticized, idealized
Yeah,
highlight reel for
yeah,
people's lives. And less people are willing to be vulnerable and open
yeah.
about what is not going right in their lives and what they wish could go better in their lives. And so, just as a start, I think it's important to set the tone by saying that. I want to say that it's easy to compare yourself, as you've mentioned, on social media by looking at other people's lives and benchmarking where you land according to where they are. Self-esteem is not comparative and it's not competitive. It's about
Mm.
looking at yourself and saying, where am I? What do I want? And how can I get there? That's why it's self-esteem. You are esteeming yourself. It's not about other people.
Huh.
It's about connecting to your inner world, yourself.
Huh.
It's your journey.
Mm.
You have to take responsibility. And this is another fundamental pillar of self-esteem. You have to take responsibility for your life. Your life, your emotional world is all your responsibility. It's nobody else's responsibility. Nobody is coming to save you, rescue you, help you, build your life. That's up to you. And
Mm.
so it's not about comparison. You are a unique individual. You are here to live a specific journey. You have a specific purpose. Your life cannot be compared to the life of another person. You have a specific combination of strengths, gifts, talents. When you started the podcast today, your energy is contagious.
Thank you. Thanks.
You are uplifting. You are spontaneous. You are energetic. I have a different energy. I'm
Mm.
calmer, more reserved, maybe
Mm.
more slower paced. Can you see we're
Mm.
different? But
Mm.
what we offer is equally valuable.
Mm. And it's
I,
also beautiful is how what we offer can come together and create something. It's like, chemistry, it creates something new. That's also a
mm,
beautiful idea.
yeah. And I
That's why
mean,
it's
the
so
world
important for you to
needs,
be you. Because if you're not you, then you're going to be adding maybe what other people already have in the mixture. We're not really creating anything.
yeah. And for you, you are maybe more extroverted. You are more
Mm.
social, more
Mm.
socially charming. That's where your
Mm.
passion lies. That I can see the way you talk. You're magnetic in that way.
Mm.
My magnetism is saying, let me provide you with a safe, warm space where I can give you a human touch and we
Mm.
can heal, build, and embody self-confidence and autonomy and have agency over our lives. Can you see it takes a variety for the world to go around. So
Yeah,
what
man.
you have is yours. What I
Mm.
have is mine. If I compare myself to you, I'm doing myself a disservice. If you compare yourself to me, you're doing yourself a disservice. I don't want you
Mm.
to change who you are. You shouldn't want to change who you are.
Mm. Have you
I
heard
shouldn't
of
want to.
the study of mimetics, mimetic theory?
No, but you mentioned this before, I think.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think
So
we had a brief discussion.
what you're talking about is so it's linked to this incredibly because okay, so mimetics is basically the area of psychology which was uh coined, invented, whatever you want to call it, by this French polymath uh who he passed away in 2015, René Girard. Girard was yeah, yeah.
Good
He was
pronunciation.
Yeah, Girard, René Girard. Yeah, but
Uh-huh.
Girard, if you want to go and search up his name, mimetic theory is basically um our understanding that people are imitation machines. Like we want what other people want, we want to be what other people are. He established the whole concept, and it's quite formative. So there was this experiment that was done with babies that
Hmm.
showcases this quite well, where there were these like three babies in a room. The room had a bunch of toys spread across the floor, right? And the babies were told they were each told to pick a toy, right? And they go and they crawl to the toy, they take, ooh, nice toys, jingle, 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 and each baby has their own toy. And then
Hmm.
there is an adult, I think it was their father, that comes into the room and then sort of gestures that they like one baby's toy, a specific baby's toy.
Hmm.
Then, oh, it's crazy. The other two babies were like, I want that toy, not the one that
Uh,
I've got. I want that
mm,
toy. And that is basically mimetic desire. We want what other people want. We don't necessarily want what we want. We are wired to imitate people even in their desires. And that's why we want to be CEO. That's why we want to be, VP
mm,
of the treasury department of that specific division, because other people want it. And that's an impulse and a part of ourselves that we cannot ignore as human beings. And that's why social media is such a dangerous thing, because it flares up our mimetic selves.
mm,
So it's so all the time. It's just happening all the time, and you're watching other people live their lives. And that's why I also think that a lot of loneliness comes from comparison, because
mm,
now it's just you looking at other people on social media or whatever and thinking, oh, I'm not with people like them. And then you start to like compare, and then you get lonelier, and it's a whole other mess that I think about. But basically, when you don't focus on yourself, you start to focus on others, and then you start to want what they want. It actually goes as far as us not adding value on a societal level or even a communal level. Because if you don't see yourself, Cheryl, who is incredible, like that safe space, that that moment to be, to weep, like if you're not there, we are not we're not the thriving humans that we can be. But then you start
mm,
to what? You start to look at the person who's extroverted, right? And then you think,
yeah,
oh, I need to be whatever, speaking. And on social media, you can easily see people who are articulate and who are energetic, whatever. They speak on stages and all these things. And then you just really forget the value only you can bring.
absolutely. I love that you shared that. And there's something that I want to reflect back on that. You
Mm,
use the example with babies, right? And I
mm,
think that's so significant because babies'
mm.
brains are underdeveloped. Right?
Yeah.
Babies don't have the emotional intelligence to understand, to rationalize, to reason, right? And so maybe that's why the other two go crawling for the same toy. But then the question becomes, is self esteem then not nurtured on a human level up until in adulthood to allow
Mm,
adults to not compare and to turn their focus inward and
mm,
reflect on what they want? And
mm,
I think that it's a testament to how universal the need for self-esteem is. Because if from babies are crawling towards the toy that now the one baby has because they want that toy. And as adults, you still want what other people have.
mm,
Have you then nurtured a sense of self and individuality to the extent that you can allow yourself the autonomy and the agency to choose to make your own choices without needing permission, certainty, guarantee, approval, or what everybody else has?
mm,
So, could it
mm,
be a reflection of the lack of self esteem nurturing in the world
mm,
as human beings?
mm. I, Honestly, yeah, because when you grow up without sort of space to believe in yourself, when you grow up without an opportunity to truly nurture something within you and see value in yourself. That's why like some people who don't have that sense of self-worth will be more likely to be people pleasers, to be, doing these mimetic things, to go with the crowd. Whereas someone who has given or has been given, because like as a
Mm,
kid, you can't really do much, who has been given an opportunity to see themselves, they've obviously felt seen by their parents, and really see like their own strengths and believe in themselves, they are much more equipped to go against the grain, to go a different direction. I literally read a book earlier
Mm.
this year called Moral Ambition by this
Mm.
guy Rutger Bregman. He's a Dutch writer, and basically it's about how there's these few people in society, or rather, it's about this concept that we shouldn't aim for just individual ambition. We shouldn't just aim to do morally good but small things. We should aim for big, ambitious, but moral feats, right? Which is such a great challenge. And he was looking at some of these people that were morally ambitious, and he found that one of the things that was a common denominator was they all had a certain level of self-esteem and agency and autonomy in their childhoods, which was,
Mm.
in fact, the specific study was on Nazi rescuers. So they are rescuers of Jews during the Nazi World War II, during the Holocaust. So basically,
Yeah.
there was this town in the Netherlands that like saved hundreds of Jewish people by hiding them away, and it was
Yeah,
started
like
by
Anne Frank. She
yes,
hitting the
exactly, like Anne Frank,
Mm.
exactly, and yeah, exactly, and basically these characteristics of these people, one of them was that they all had this belief in themselves. Like you can't not believe in yourself to do something so like so left field. You
Yeah.
lie to to lie to a policeman to their face, and the risk. No, there's no go that way, but the Jews are actually that side. And
Yeah.
it's incredible that the power of having been given that belief in yourself. I wanted to also ask about. So you also speak of self acceptance in on the journey to self esteem. So it's
Mm.
accepting oneself to eventually esteem oneself. How do we, in that self acceptance, or you might even say self love, or maybe you want to define these terms as the expert, how do we reconcile that self acceptance and that ambition? Because, like, so much of ambition and wanting it even comes from
Yeah.
that maybe mimetic side, but so much of it is from like a sort of lack. Like, I don't
Mm.
have something, I desire it because it's outside of me, and so that's why I
Mm.
go and I pursue these things, and I have these ambitions. How do you reconcile that? Uh, like how? Yeah.
Mm. Are you asking? I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking if you have ambitions, how do you still accept yourself?
Kinda, like,
And
how does self isn't self-love and ambition some sort of opposite? Aren't they kind of opposed in some way?
so I don't think that they have to be opposites. Okay.
Mm,
You have to look at what is the root driving your ambition. Like you
sure.
said, there's lack, right? So is it coming from a fear based decision?
Mm,
Or is it coming, or are you operating from a place of joy and self sufficiency in wanting that ambition? So, for
hmm,
example, a lot of my ambition to become a CA was to be financially secure and stable and to offer myself and my family stability and an abundant life that we
hmm,
didn't experience in the past. That was a fear based decision. I was coming from low self esteem.
hmm,
I'm afraid of
hmm,
not having.
hmm,
I'm afraid of being in this reality for the rest of my life. Okay.
sure.
But for a lot of CAs who haven't had the background of being underprivileged or
Hmm,
um, having a more stable self esteem upbringing,
hmm,
their roots might be I want this for myself because I enjoy tax and management accounting and financial accounting and auditing.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
what I want.
Yeah.
It's coming from a place of this brings me joy, this brings me purpose. I don't need it necessarily to become financially secure, whatever the reason may be. So you can be ambitious and you can have ambitions, but ask yourself, is it coming from a fear-based place or is it coming from an empowered place?
Sure. Okay, can we dive deeper into that fear-based decision-making concept? Because I think
Mm,
that's big. I think that's
mm,
very, very big. Can we double click on that?
yeah. Okay, so you want to understand more about it.
Yes.
Okay. So I think a lot of people who lack self-awareness and self-esteem operate out of fear. And when you operate out of fear unknowingly, you're
Hmm.
coming from a place of lack, right? And a lot of people don't realize that they are making fear-based decisions. They don't realize that the root of their fear-based decision is the need for approval, praise, validation, the need to be seen a certain way. Whereas an empowered decision is not coming from the need to be seen a certain way. An empowered decision can come from self acceptance. Like,
Hmm.
I know who I am, I like who I am,
Hmm.
and I'm choosing this not because I want to be perceived a certain way, but because
Hmm.
I want it for myself.
Hmm.
And I think when we make fear based decisions, we stay in the cycle, right? Of needing to be perfect, needing to people please, needing to be strong,
Hmm.
needing to be seen a certain way.
Sure.
So, if you want to know if you're making a fear based decision, ask yourself, why? What's my intention? What do I want? And I see this a lot in my CA clients, in my women CA clients. They will people please at work. They won't set boundaries. They won't say when their plate is too full. They'll take on work beyond their capacity just to be seen as competent. You are
Sure.
competent.
Sure.
You have qualified as a CA.
Hmm.
Taking on more work is not going to make you look more competent. It's just going to exhaust you and burn you out. You are allowed to say no
Hmm.
respectfully.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to say this word that actually describes exactly what your clients typically go through when
Yeah.
when they're trying to honor themselves. They think of it as selfish, and there's also those childhood values and kind of morals that were imposed that create cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. And you're right, it is cognitive dissonance because it's two opposing concepts, right? It's
Mm,
how do I honor myself? And a lot of my clients use the word humble. How do I honor myself by still being humble?
sure.
And then I ask them to look up the definition of humble. And it
Hey.
means to have a low estimate of your worth.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, you know, selflessness is something that is programmed from
Hmm.
childhood.
Hmm.
And a lot of the time we are taught to be humble, to put other people first, to
Hmm.
be respectful.
Hmm.
But we are never taught how to respect ourselves, how to hold ourselves in high regard. It's always about the outside world. It's always about other
Hmm.
people. It's always about the external. Parents didn't know because emotional health and emotional development was not a huge factor up until recent years, maybe the last 20
Yeah.
years, that it's
Yeah.
become more um, of a, how can I say, prominent teaching in the world. And so parents didn't have the skills, the competencies, the awareness that children needed to be brought up with self-esteem. And
Yeah.
so, and never mind the awareness, the skill set of how do I bring my child up with self-esteem? How do I empower my child to be esteemed,
What do you
to
think
be
is
an
part of that
individual?
skill set? Specifically in the raising of kids, what do you think is part of that skill set?
Firstly, the parent having self-esteem.
Huh. Huh.
So the parent daring to confront their own generational baggage and trauma and patterns and limiting beliefs and stories so as to not offload that unconsciously onto the child.
Huh.
Firstly, that is the first prerequisite.
Huh.
And then to develop a skill set to learn how to attune to your child's needs, to see your child for who they are, not for who you want them to be. A lot of parents seek their own worth through their children. You hear a lot of
Sure.
parents saying, oh, my child's a doctor, my child's an accountant, my child's an engineer. And it creates this hierarchy of my child is better than yours because my child has a specific academic, social label. It's not about the label. It's about allowing your child to be who they are, to be authentic.
Hey.
And so if a parent, if a person can be assertive with themselves and attuned to their own needs, they can be assertive with their children and attuned to their children.
Huh.
And if they can't do that and the parent can't see the child and allow the child to be who they are, the child automatically molds into someone they feel they need to be to fit into the world, to be seen, to be heard, to be praised, to be validated.
Huh. Huh.
So
Yeah.
in the world of parenting, there's a lot of, it's about developing the skill set to learn to connect to your child, to understand the needs of your child, who your child is. Is your child, you see, what I also want to say is the reason why a lot of children grow up with low self-worth and become adults who have low self-worth is because the parents look through a lens of what they deem as worthy. So if a parent values a child who's academic, the child who's creative and artistic is not going to
Oh.
feel seen. And that's going to have major impacts on that child's self-esteem. I've had clients who have explained this through their journey to me. They've said, my father was a pastor. I grew up in the church. My sister played an instrument. My other sister sang. My brother did this in the church. I didn't do anything, and I was made to feel like I don't belong. I was forced to try and find a place in the church, and I didn't want to find a place in the church. I didn't want to sing. I didn't want to play an instrument. I didn't want to do that. So that need, that forcing of your children to feel like they need to do something or be something in order to feel like they need to belong is harmful to the child's self-esteem. And so they grow up feeling inadequate and feeling like they need to fit in a box that they don't feel they've ever fitted into or belonged in. There's so much that could be a whole other podcast, to be honest.
I agree. For when you come back,
Yeah.
I actually want to say an extract again from what you've written, which links
Mm.
very much. You said, when I started studying psychotherapy and self-esteem as a profession 4 years ago, I uncovered how many limiting beliefs I had been unconsciously living with that ran my life like a robot. These beliefs were from my past, from my parents, childhood, teachers, peers, and culture, where I was taught what was good, bad, acceptable, and unacceptable. I was taught that if I achieved, I would be worthy, that if I pleased everyone at the cost of my own happiness, I would be accepted, that if I went with the flow, I wouldn't be the difficult one, that if I
Mm.
stayed silent instead of saying how I truly felt, I wouldn't ruffle any feathers. And the consequences of living with these beliefs were severe. I took on piles of work while others had work-life balance. I stayed in friendships and family dynamics that were unhealthy. I stayed invisible and overlooked while others shone at work. We've all developed unconscious beliefs about ourselves before we even realized it. Honestly, I used to believe limiting beliefs were just woo-woo superficial fluff. But this is actually the work we all need to learn in school to live authentically and successfully that we never got. It's far from superficial. Yeah.
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 That's deep.
That's deep. That's deep.
Mm,
Honestly, it's like, I have this concept idea that CASA, those four letters, amplify and multiply, they do not add. They do not make, they do not create. Um, and we pursue them often to try and fill something, to add, to create, to make ourselves whole, right? To make ourselves into something that is worthy. But actually, all it will do is multiply whatever's there. And there was this quote by uh, Roman philosopher, Stoic philosopher Seneca, that I think ancient Roman philosopher that it's so profound and it explains a lot of what we need. And he said, "You don't need a change of sky, but a change of soul. You may go sail the wide open sea, but wherever you go, your faults will follow." And I feel like when we do this, when we pursue the CA, oftentimes we're in pursuit of a change of sky, right? We're in pursuit of
mm,
like when I'm there, when I've got this thing, I will finally be. But no, it's always been there, the things that you need to work on. And I wanted to ask about what you think the path to maybe there's different stages to this, because there's a path to self-acceptance that it's its own thing, and only once you accept yourself, only once you can see yourself, for what you are, then can you esteem, right? Then can you respect yourself. What do you think is
mhm.
the path to that first one of self-acceptance?
Learning who you are,
Sure.
getting information about yourself. Because you're right, you can't, it's acceptance is a prerequisite to growth. You can't
Mm.
grow before you accept what's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so self acceptance is about learning to be happy with who you are, that you are enough as you are. And a lot of people don't feel like they're enough because they're constantly comparing.
Hey.
And a lot of people don't have that information about who they are. They don't have a vocabulary. They can't
Mm.
articulate it. And so
Mm.
when women go through my program, one of the most um, common feedbacks that I get is I've given myself less credit than I should have in my life because they're so used to seeing their deficiencies that they cannot see. They've never been taught. No one's taught them to see their positives. No one's taught them what their qualities are. And it comes back to the parent seeing the child. An esteemed parent sees a child. An esteemed parent gives a child positive feedback. An esteemed parent mirrors the essence of the child. When your parents have not mirrored your essence back to you, a void starts to grow.
Sure.
And that's the work, the self-esteem work that adults find themselves doing in adulthood. Filling that void of not being seen and attuned to as a child.
Yeah.
How many times in childhood do we hear parents saying, "Why can't you be more like your brother? Why can't you be more like your sister? Your sister does this." Or, I personally didn't get that, but a lot of my clients have, and it is a very big reason
Sure.
for low self-esteem, is that comparison. Comparison doesn't start on social media. It starts in your home. It just is amplified then by social media because the seed is already there. It grows.
Yeah.
So,
There was another extract, the last extract I'll be sharing, that I think is so big regarding that point on growth, right? There's a seed that we need to, there was a seed of a weed that we need to actually pluck, right? We need to go and take it out. And it starts with what you was talking about in terms of acknowledging yourself, in terms of getting the facts, not the opinions, not the fiction, the facts. And you wrote, everyone wants to be a leader, but not everyone is willing to go first. Everyone wants to grow, but not everyone is willing to admit what needs healing. Everyone wants to be authentic, but the thought of having weaknesses makes you wonder, what does the existence of my weaknesses say about me? So here's the lesson. If looking at yourself honestly is too threatening, you can't grow. You can't change what you're not willing to acknowledge.
yeah.
Also really good. Also really good.
Thank you. And just to add to the self-acceptance part, now that you read that, self-acceptance is rooted in radical honesty.
Sure.
Can you have an honest relationship with yourself? And that means taking credit and acknowledging and celebrating your positives, your traits, your good qualities, your strengths, your skills, your achievements, but also being able to admit your deficiencies and your flaws. And as human beings, we all have deficiencies and flaws. We are not perfect. Nobody is perfect. And the moment you get to that point is the moment you start to grow, because your flaws and your weaknesses and your deficiencies do not become so threatening that it is so painful to face them. They simply become aspects to work on.
Yeah, I think it's like self-awareness. I find self-awareness to be, sometimes you get reductive when you think these things, but honestly, it's always self-awareness, like real self-awareness. Because I don't know, maybe it's self-awareness coupled with a genuine drive, like a sort of like inner motor that's moving, because you can, I guess, on some level, learn yourself and then not change. But then, in my opinion, if you learn about yourself and you don't change, it means that that's what you're fine with. You're completely fine with that. But sometimes you learn about yourself and then you want to change, right? Because you know these things that you might like, you might not like. And so you will actively go and act in a way that will change it. Like
Mm.
you, and it's unconscious. You're just now aware of it, and then you just start like sometimes like I'll like there's those unconscious things that happen, but then the moment that you're now conscientized to things, you just immediately change them. You just immediately, the moment you're aware of it, you just do differently. It might not be radically differently, especially at the first time, because yeah, as you say, growth is it's that process, and it
Yeah.
happens over time. But it might even be just that 1% that takes you in its trajectory to start being like different over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people and a lot of CAs,
Hmm.
thinking about their weaknesses, flaws, development areas, challenges their self concept to a point that it shakes their core.
Sure. Yeah.
And it becomes hard to be compassionate with yourself from that place and actually take action, because if you're threatened by it, if it's so painful to look at, how will you transmute that into an energy to grow? How can you
Hmm.
transcend it if you're not willing to be honest and look at and accept? And that's where comparison comes in, because I hear a lot of my clients saying, oh, but other women who are CFOs don't have these
Hmm.
fears, already worked
Hmm.
on these, almost
Hmm.
shaming themselves for having a certain fear, instead of saying, I have this fear. This is where I
Hmm.
am in my journey, and I'm going to work on it because I want to be better.
Hmm.
It is so futile to compare yourself and then say, oh, but she doesn't have this, I have this, and
Yeah.
diminish yourself. You can't grow from that place.
Hmm.
That's why comparison is such a thief of joy and energy and life force.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy. Cheryl, in closing, this is how we always close on the podcast.
Mhm.
Uh, if you could go back to first year, second year, maybe even high school Cheryl, what
Yeah,
would you tell her?
it's going to work out the way it should. Trust that it will work out. Don't worry so much. Enjoy life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Don't be so results driven. Enjoy your teenage years. Enjoy your 20s. Dance. Be social. Don't take yourself so
Dance,
seriously.
dance skill. Hey.
Yeah. For me personally, that's what I would tell my younger self. It's going to be okay. It's going to work out. You're going to get there. Trust yourself. Enjoy life fully. You can't get time back.
Hmm. Hmm. Life is lived within life. Like there was a poem I wrote the other day that that sort of explains how I how a little bit of my philosophy around conclusions. Like you said, don't be focused so much on results, Cheryl. But I find that those conclusions, those results, that's where you're not living. Like when you're always focused on an end, then you forget
Yeah.
that life is the thing, right? They say life is a journey, but there's this Buddhist um I guess personality, Alan Watts, in the 90s, 80s, 70s, whenever he was around, and he says like his axiomatical claim, his metaphysical claim is that life is fundamentally playful. And we
Yeah.
sort of think of life as like, the journey to the destination. Therefore, it's like, love the journey or whatever. But there's also something about this element of dance. Like, why do you dance? Do you dance to get to the end of it? Do you dance to get
Mm-mm.
to that location on the dance floor? Like, you dance for the fun. You
Yeah.
dance to dance. And
To
so
feel alive,
to feel
really.
alive, to live, you dance to live.
Yeah,
You dance to live.
exactly.
Yeah, man. So dance Cheryl in high school or wherever you are in first year varsity. Cheryl, where can we catch you? Where can we find you? And what how can we get in touch?
So my website is under construction. The best way is follow me on Instagram, follow me on LinkedIn. My email is info@cherylcrowie.com, so you can get in touch there. I have a lot of free resources as well. If anybody is in need of those, I focus on 4 areas specifically: relationships, whether it's attracting um, aligned romantic relationships or friendships, building connection and overcoming conflict and hostility in existing relationships, confident leadership for your career, and um, finding work life balance, joy, and fulfillment for the busy career woman whose life is dominated by work at the moment. So there's specific areas I work with.
Right.
Or work within, and yeah, that's where you can catch me. I want to say thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation. I'm highly impressed by the depth of your knowledge and wisdom,
Thank you.
and I've
Thank you.
thoroughly enjoyed the philosophical aspects that you have um, magically scattered throughout our conversation. They were very insightful. Loved it. Loved chatting to you. Loved sharing and collaborating. Yeah, thank you for
Mm.
the opportunity.
Thank you for blessing us today. I think the chemistry, the creation, obviously it was us coming together and creating this beauty. So thank you,
Yeah.
Cheryl. Guys, I hope it does not end, but that it begins in CASA. Cheryl, thank you.
Thank you.